Well, hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. We're back here with The Hardline. I think it's episode 3. It's episode 3 or episode 4. Brownie joined me last week as Gabe wasn't able to make it. And Gabe was on the fan forum as well last week, which was explosive and a hell of a lot of fun. We always like getting my good friend from over the pond on for his anger-inducing opinions sometimes, and controversial opinions. It's always nice. But
it was as bad as I felt after that match. And I did feel bad. I felt horrible. I was angry. It was nice to, maybe it's the first time ever since I've been involved with this channel in 3 years that the majority seemed to agree with what I was saying in the comment section. Versus roasting me for having a haircut, existing with my accent, or So it was nice for a moment. I felt like one of you, but then somebody was like, said something like, "We can agree with Gabe because he's an outsider." I was like, "Oh, no,
just making you feel like you're on the edge again, the periphery,
on the fringes,
the fringes of the Leeds space." Overall, mate, what's going on in your world? How are you? You all good?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Good. Went to Bay FC match last night. It was actually really good. About 18,000 in attendance. Beautiful. 18 degrees Celsius, I think. Clear skies, nice cool breeze, sitting by pitch side. It was really nice. Yeah, good day.
Yep. Sounds lovely.
And I ordered a charcuterie board as well, which was really good.
At the game?
Yeah, it was quite nice.
Like what? Like in the stands, or were you in hospitality, or?
So I was sort of in hospitality, yeah. But
okay.
I still ordered a charcuterie board. They brought it to me.
Nice. I was like, is he just in the stands?
I asked them if I could get a glass of Merlot as well. They're like, we don't have it here. I was like,
just like a glass of port in the car.
Exactly. Sat with like the supporter scarf like wound around my neck with a blazer.
Oh God. Gentrification.
It's just snobbery, isn't it? It's not gentrification. I didn't invade an old neighborhood and make it different. Like, got it.
So yeah, mate. Obviously, the international break, and surprising probably for the viewers, Gabe has not really been keeping an eye on the US men's national team, which is staggering to me. It's probably been the first time
I didn't even know we played.
I came on and started to set the mick out of Gabe a little bit there, and he didn't realize I'd come up against Panama. So there we go. I'll have a little quick check now, but it's not been the best sort of start, has it, for old Poch?
No, apparently he's done well. He just lost this match.
Right. Okay.
I'm not clear if it was a full side. I don't know anything about it. Who did England play? Luxembourg.
It was the CONCACAF Nations League.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's one of those Nations League tournaments that FIFA wants us to believe means something.
No one cares about.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, the reality is you can go to see a U.S. men's national team match if you pay like $300. It's like, nah.
Is that what it is now? Jeez,
it's something absurd. Yeah,
it's pretty rough, isn't it? When it comes to like the ticket prices for national sides, it's mental. Easy says Farke, first comment as well. Farke out if we drop out of the top 2. Connor's worse than my missus for being ready on time. Facts. Hi guys, how's it going? Yeah, good evening to everybody. Darren, I presume, is in the building. Tracy's saying Gabe. Hello, sausages, says Maximilian. Paul says, who's all injured so far, lads? I think I actually guess that's a pretty interesting. Me and Gabe have got a lot that we want to talk about on this show, but I guess the sort of damning thing right now, Gabe, is the performance that we saw from Willie Gnonto in that second half, and let's hope it's something where he's back for that Swansea game. In terms of his injury, obviously it looked like he got a bit of a knock against when he was playing for the under-21s, came off after 45. Not ideal, mate, but when you've got 15 players going out for international duty, there's probably going to be one or two of them that carry maybe a niggle.
I can't understand why managers don't just fake injuries.
Like Ferguson used to do. Ferguson used to do it all the time.
And I'm pretty sure Wilder does something like this too. He just mixes things up and in the NFL they do it quite a bit as well. Most professional sports leagues do. I don't understand it. I would just say, Willie Gnonto's experienced some muscle soreness, so we're going to keep him here over the break. I mean, what let's look at who's on the shelf. Ethan Ampadu's hurt, right? Max Vober, well, we'll never see him play for Leeds again. I don't even remember seeing him play for Leeds. Maybe 5-6 times. Who else is out?
So I've had Bamford's coming back, which is good.
All right. God be praised. Willie Nanto's hurt. Hopefully it's not too bad.
On a positive note, Joseph scored and Isaac Schmidt apparently had a really good.
Two guys that Farke won't let get in the game played really well.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, apparently Schmidt was very good. He was getting plaudits.
I can't do that. I can't be in this bad of a mood to start out. Sorry. Let me have another sip of coffee. And
Come on, let's raise it. Let's raise it. What time is it over there? What time is it? Are we 8 hours? Is it midday?
It's just afternoon. Yeah.
Right. Okay. There we go. So a couple more sips.
I start out this way. This isn't something that just happens later.
Gets progressively
miserable.
Do you get progressively better or worse? How does it
depends on if it's a work day or not. And hopefully, I'm going to get out for like a hike this afternoon because live in the Bay Area, you have to do hiking.
Yeah, that's it. That's the trend. What about James? James actually, I think he got man of the match for the.
Yeah, Wales. But he wasn't he icing?
Yeah, he was. But from seeing James a couple of times, in all fairness, when he does leave the field of play, he does ice his ankle quite a bit, to be honest. So hopefully it's just a blood flow thing. If it's not, I can't be asked with football.
I'll never know what it's like to have that kind of pace. Like even at my peak athletic ability, I'd never had anything close to that. So maybe it puts a lot of stress on you.
I was quite quick. Not as quick as Dan James, but I was quite quick. I used to utilize it a lot, not anymore. The Puig says
less of an intelligent player, more of a fast player.
Yeah, it's the Schmidt stuff that still baffled me. He needs to play more. Yeah, I mean that's on the manager, I guess. Danny, as always, mate, gifted one Leeds fan channel membership. Top man, Danny.
What a guy, Danny.
Someone picked that one up. Okay, we wanted to talk, didn't we, about Mr. Kalvin Phillips? I've done a video on it this morning. There seems to be a lot of rhetoric right now that when we go to the Premier League, what I find fascinating about this, Gabe, is obviously where I am in the country, Manchester, obviously used to do stuff for Man City. You hear certain things, and obviously them wanting to get rid of him is not only something that they want to do, but it feels like it's literally one of their number one sort of agendas going on this summer. So
would you want them on your books? Of course, they're number one.
Precisely. So they're wanting to get rid of Kalvin Phillips. Like getting rid of him is one of their number one things. So, yeah, getting rid of him, and it does make a lot of sense. The links coming up with Leeds United. Phillips has spoken previously about when he joined Ipswich about how tough it would have been if Leeds came up. There's then been stuff from the Ipswich side of things as well, continuously in the news rags over there, that he favours a move to Leeds if Leeds are to come up. I just think, look, there's a lot of agent talk, of course, and we are being completely speculative here because there's no real foundation there. There's been a couple of journalists on the circuit as well who've said he will move to Leeds if Leeds get promoted. I think it's a really interesting topic. I did something a little bit earlier on about it. It's always going to be in the ether, Gabe. We know this with Kalvin Phillips. I think my stance on it and what I've said earlier on is I think right now we've got a better midfield. I know he's gone to Manchester City, 4 years ago now. He was in that England squad in 2021 next to Declan Rice. But for me right now, he's been hampered with injuries. He's played what a combined, I think in about 3 years, he's played less than 2,000 minutes. I mean, just for context, Brendan Aronson has played 3,000 minutes this season. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for me regardless. I mean, the only way, Gabe, I would look at it and say maybe would be if he was a sub to obviously Ampadu and Tanaka, because he doesn't get in ahead of those two for me anyway. And then, we got him in on loan and City were paying a lot of his wages. But from a financial standpoint, that wouldn't make sense for them. From a Leeds standpoint, you're getting a midfielder in who's backup, but it's a Leeds midfielder again, Gabe, who is going to get relegated with Ipswich. But obviously, he'd go back to his parent club. It has been a really rocky period for him outside of Leeds United as soon as he got to Man City. I don't think he was ever good enough to play for Man City if we're taking sentiment aside.
Not even close.
He was never good enough. No. And what I will say is, and a lot of people have said this before, Gabe, and he moved to Man City, right? He moved to Man City. He didn't dig his heels in. He moved to Man City, and that's absolutely fine. That was his career. City are unbelievable. They're in a different stratosphere to Leeds United. That time, the champions, going for the Champions League at that time. You don't begrudge him of that. But he went to Manchester City, and from what you hear right now, Gabe, a lot of it is, well, okay, let me just summarize it, and I'll move on to you. How I see it is he needs the move way more than Leeds United should need the move.
You got to move to West Ham. He was terrible. Got to move to Ipswich. He's also been terrible. And if you watch the quality of his performances, it doesn't look like the same player. We're not talking about 1 season, 2 seasons, 3. 3 seasons. 3. He's been very, very poor. He's been out of shape. The things that made him exceptional in a Bielsa system, we don't see in his game anymore. So it makes you wonder if he needs those conditions to thrive.
Yeah.
So that leads me to think that there's only one condition where I would ever take him back, and that's if Marcelo Bielsa was still the manager of Leeds United. And even then, for what he's on wage-wise, people are engaging with the idea of Kalvin Phillips, of who the guy was years ago. Remember, before Marcelo Bielsa came to the club, Kalvin Phillips was not an exceptional player. He was an average player playing in an average league, right? So he had a run, a vein of form that was absolutely put him into the England squad, got him a big money move. He took it. Just because somebody wants to go back to their rich girlfriend doesn't mean that girlfriend wants you back. I don't want Kalvin Phillips back. I don't see what he gives us. You're quite right to point out the current stable of midfielders we have, at least the starters, are better. Because Kalvin Phillips isn't good enough to be the starter for a relegation side in the Premier League right now. If you've watched his performances, and I mean really watch them, don't watch them as like he's one of our own. Don't watch them as a former Leeds player. Just watch them like you'd watch any other player. Call him Brendan McKennie. And everybody would be roasting him in the Leeds United fan base. So no, you wouldn't want him. You wouldn't want him for the kind of money that the reason that Manchester City want to move him on as quickly as possible, because the more he plays, the more value he loses. It's hard not to see that, right? So I feel bad about it because, for everything we've seen, seems like a great guy. Gave us some really good years here at the club. And I wanted things to work out for him. But this isn't a charity. And, I'm not particularly interested in bringing back a player to resuscitate his career for a feel-good story. But again, maybe Bielsa's shown. But how old is he now? Is he in his 30s now?
29 going on 30.
Yeah. So, just the ability to put those miles in that you would need to put in order to get yourself back to that physical level. I don't know if he's capable of it. So it would have to be like, we'd almost have to get him back for free for me to be like, and we wouldn't, right? So yeah, for me, it's a non-starter. It's sad. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm bagging on this guy, but the reality is that everything we talk about in terms of attributes for Phillips hasn't been true for 3 years.
Yeah,
I've seen nothing in his game. Like there's a comment down there from Paul. I appreciate it. He's praised balls better than anyone we have. He hasn't for 3 years. He hasn't. And
I think maybe it's right to say that he's picked up a little bit of form at Ipswich. They have said this. They've got a midfield pivot of Jens Kajust in him, and I don't think it's a bad pivot. But I don't think the worrying thing for me, Gabe, is when I've watched Kalvin Phillips, and I have done a lot this season because I've been actually really interested. Because I'm not really that bothered. I'm a bit of a weirdo like this. I'm not really that bothered about watching the upper echelon of the Premier League. I'm actually interested in the newly promoted teams.
Yeah, you're watching our competition.
Yeah, because I'm wondering how they're performing. I'm wondering if we could emulate that.
Yeah,
I am looking at Kalvin Phillips, and there isn't that much of a step up to Sam Morsey. And with the greatest of respect, that would be a big concern for me. As a replacement for Tanaka and Ethan Ampadu, if we were to, sway a lot of I think the 49ers will spend £200 million. That's what I think is going to happen if Leeds United do go up. I think we're going to spend an absolute war chest.
150 between 200. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a massive amount of money spent. If you are to, let's say, if I don't think they'll sign Joe Rothwell. I think maybe Elia Gruev would need to be improved on, and I think they would know that. I don't think they'd get rid of Allegro. I think he'd be a bench option, but I think they'd know that they'd need a third midfielder in there. I'd be really concerned if, let's say, we got into a situation where maybe Ethan went down or Tanaka went down. You've got to profile that midfielder really perfectly. In a sense, Gabe, you kind of want a Joe Rothwell sort of profile, but someone maybe who's a better number 6, someone who's a better defender. You want that all-round midfielder, of course you do. But for Kalvin Phillips, I would be very concerned if we went to the Premier League and we had midfield depth of, I like Tanaka, I like Ampadu as a pair, and I think that would work. Ampadu's injury record is always a concern. And then you look at that step down, that sub player. If that sub player was then to be Kalvin Phillips who's barely touched 2,000 minutes in nearly 3.5 years, that would be a massive concern for me. And do you know what, Gabe, that would do to me, mate? I mentioned it this morning. That would look at a Leeds of old. That would look for me at maybe decisions that have been made with Leeds United. I mean, the one that always sticks out to me is Patrick Bamford when they gave him a 5-year deal based on essentially that season. I think when you do look at that a lot of that with Radrizzani and co was maybe based a little bit on sentiment, and Leeds would get fleeced a lot. I do think we'd get fleeced a lot. You even look at the Rafinha deal, the Kalvin Phillips deal. Could we've even got more for him? Rafinha, we definitely could have done. We didn't deal with Chelsea, did we? Because Rafinha wanted to go to Barcelona. But I think the whole thing is Leeds need to be in a ruthless, cutthroat sort of business right now. And I think going back to Kalvin Phillips sort of replicates what we've seen previously when it comes to almost that sentiment attachment.
Yeah, and the reality is there are some players that can go from strength to strength, and then there are some players that thrive when they're the underdogs, right? When they're told they're not good enough. And the minute they sort of feel comfortable in their careers, you see them start to slide back. For me, Phillips is one of those players. Phillips is one of those players. Like, so even to bring him in coming off the bench, we wouldn't have the best Kalvin Phillips for that. Unless we literally told him, like, and he wouldn't sign a contract if he was told, hey, by the way, we're bringing you in to be so you're going to have to earn every minute of playing time. He wouldn't sign a contract for that. He's going to go to one of these other clubs. Either it's going to be a European club that just wants to bring a former England international in for marketing purposes, or a club that there's a manager that knows him, that he's going to feel the love. I just haven't seen. Have you seen him push himself in 3 years?
I think if I'm being honest with you, I think for Ipswich he's rediscovered a little bit of form, and
that's not what I asked. Have you seen him push himself
in terms of what you define as
like he's been all right for Ipswich, but after a horrendous start, like so by proxy, anything would be an improvement. But I just mean, like, does he look like he covers ground the same way he did? Does he run the same way he did? Does he look for none of those attributes I see that come from knowing that the manager could move you out of the starting lineup anytime and you're going to be glued to the bench? I think that I haven't seen him really push for it. Do you see that ambition anymore from him? Do you see that endeavor? Because he was a great two-way player for years, and one of the things I really liked about him was
devil's advocate would and if I'll play that, or as Mr. Brown likes to call it, devil's advocate. What we will say is, would he rediscover almost that verve, that fire if he came to Leeds United, his boyhood club?
No. But have you seen any evidence of it in other places? Got a loan move to West Ham to rediscover himself. That didn't work out.
That should have been perfect for him. That should have been perfect.
It should have been.
Almost stepping in for Declan Rice, who just moved to Arsenal. It should have been perfect
with a manager that wanted him.
Yeah,
and like said he wanted him, and he just could not. And he came in out of shape.
Yeah, he did.
Like we gave, and rightfully so, we gave Weston McKennie a world of scorn for coming in out of shape. He got the same treatment, Phillips, when he went to West Ham, and he got the same treatment with Ipswich earlier this season because he did it again. I don't know what it takes for this guy to be motivated. I think that's what I'm saying. So do I think a homecoming where he feels the love is good for him? No, unless he was playing for a manager that would unequivocally say, listen, you have to be at this weight to get on the pitch for me. You know, like you have to be in this form to get on the pitch for me. Or not only am I going to glue you to the bench, I'm going to tell the press that you're not ready to play. Like when Pep said he came in overweight, Pep wasn't being mean. Like he's being honest. And
Well, Pep got a hell of a lot of flack for that.
He did, but he wouldn't have gotten that flack if it hadn't been an England international.
Let's get into a couple of comments as well. Gabe, I've just sent you something as well on the private. This cannot be a serious consideration, says Mark B. Mark, it is. It's going around, and if you look at some of the responses, this is what we want on the channel. This is why I'm kind of like going back at Gabe a little bit. I've got my opinion on Kalvin Phillips, but I'm trying to play the other card as well, because, you know, a lot of people do think that this would be a good move for Leeds United. Tim's one of the members. I'd take Cal back as a decent, tougher player who could grab games by the scruff of the neck, as long as we don't get spanked over the price. I think with
Tim, I haven't seen that Kalvin in 3 years.
It's going to be so hard to stay up. Kalvin could be okay as backup. I don't want him. Please, Leeds, don't sign him. Dan says, I'd take Phillips back for the shirt sales. Okay.
The capitalist, Daniel. All right.
Daniel, the capitalist. I love it, Daniel. Get this man on the commercial team.
He's going on a hike as well. Good job.
Yeah. Paul says he sprays balls better than anyone we have. Love KP, but should never go back. Batty was the only explanation. Yeah, good example there, Adam. I think that's the only one that's ever worked. Clem says, no more old gas sentiments. It's cost us in the past. Kalvin as unfinished business at Leeds. Some players can only be good for Leeds. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. It definitely is. I'm not too sure. We'll move on. We'll move on from this, of course. Gabe.
Also, injury record, Conor.
Yeah,
had a bad one with Leeds, and then it hasn't gotten better.
Yeah, I mean, you look even when we're trying to stay in the Premier League, you know, when Marsh was there, and obviously we went to that last day, didn't we, against Brentford, and you had a patched up Kalvin Phillips in there, but the back end of that season he was barely available, and when he did come on, he looked miles off it. Absolutely, he was getting cooked in that central space. Kalvin Phillips was perfect for Marcelo Bielsa. The hard yards were done in that Bielsa side, and Bielsa morphed him into a single pivot, literally a quarterback role, something you barely see in the modern game now, where he just had free roam to do whatever he wanted. The system facilitated Kalvin Phillips, and the system right now in a 4-2-3-1. I don't see how that would. And look, he did it in England. He played next to Declan Rice, 100%. But he is also not going to have that caliber of player. And relative, England are one of the best teams on the international stage, even though we barely show it. But the talent in and around Kalvin.
Even the England hater in me doesn't disagree with that.
Of course. Okay, so something else I wanted to talk about, and this is you know, it's obviously we've had a bit of time apart, which always cripples my heart, Gabe. But I wanted to talk about, if we did get to the Premier League and clubs get into the Premier League, I wanted to talk about the notion of maybe, and you've seen it the last 2 seasons, of teams going up and massively struggling, right? It looks like we're going to have 3 coming down this season. The season before, the 3 went down as well. It was quite unique, actually, wasn't it? The season before that, the 3 promoted clubs, I think it was Forest, I think it was Bournemouth, and there was another one, Brentford, I think. They all stayed up. I might have got that wrong. I think I have got that wrong. But yeah, there was 3 teams that did stay up. I think it was Fulham, actually. Sorry, not Brentford. So that was quite unusual. Obviously, Leeds went down with Leicester and Southampton. But it does feel now, with the distribution of wealth, the distribution of money, it's now extremely difficult. And the proof is in the pudding right now that it's going to be so difficult. And there is a 90-95% chance that next season is going to be absolutely horrific for us. But there are examples in there, Gabe. There are your Nottingham Forest of recent years, your Fulhams, your Aston Villas, all very, very well backed, it has to be said, with magnificent owners, with a lot of collateral there. Where are you standing on it now? Because you are a man who can take a step back. You are a man who can look at it, and you can look at the overall pie and you know, the Premier League pie, which is the most, you know, it's the most expensive pie you'll ever buy. Right. And it's difficult to break that. So where do you stand with it? Is there even any point in Leeds United going up? Is there even any hope, Gabe? Or is it just fantasy at this moment in time, Leeds getting up to the Premier League, or any other team getting up to the Premier League and potentially staying up?
Yeah, this narrative is weird, because there are yo-yo clubs that the financial model is that you have owners that are a bit skint, don't like to spend. I mean, the reason some of these teams came directly down is because it wasn't that like, if Leeds United went up last season, it would have been probably a different story.
Yeah.
But Luton went up. Think about when Luton went up and how they came back down. Luton should never have been in the Premier League. Realistically, they got there.
They gave a good fist of it as well. They gave a good fist of it.
They did their best, right? But like, they don't have their ownership fraction of income, their gate fraction of income, their supporter fraction of income. I mean, it was a dream story for them. And I was happy for them when it happened. Right. But like the reality is it was always going to be rough for them, and coming back down even into the championship, it's clear that it's been tough. Right. So, I just think that like when you look at Brentford, they've stayed up and they've done well. They haven't been, challenging for Europe, but I think they've generally been pretty stable. When you look at, like you quite rightly mentioned, Fulham, Bournemouth, what you notice is these managers these clubs either, I gave it away. These clubs either had top managers when they went up, or they invested in a top manager to keep them there. Bournemouth is the best example. Everyone who watches this channel knows that I have no love for Bournemouth, right? I hate it as a town, all sorts of stuff. But I mean, for them to get to the Premier League and then essentially sack the guy that got them there in favor of a better manager, that shows club ambition, because the margins, that comment's so right. The margins are so small. You have to spend well. You have to buy well. You have to sell players on that aren't going to crack it, and you have to get rid of sentiment. Additionally, you have to bring someone in that is a special manager. Like Areola could be a manager of a big club, 100%. These clubs like Aston Villa, Fulham's manager, I think, is a very good manager. Obviously Thomas Frank at Brentford's a very good manager. We'd be lucky to have a guy like that. So I think that those are the common denominators. And yeah, you need a lot of money to stay up, but it's not just a game of Monopoly. I mean, Manchester City, what are they, 5th place now? They've obviously had a financial situation that dwarfs others. Nottingham Forest, look at how well they've done. I mean, they have money, but they don't have that much money. So I don't know. This invention that it's just inevitability. When you look at the Premier League table, with the exception of like Leicester winning it when they won it, by and large, it's always the same teams contending to win the championship, right? So to win the division. So at the end of the day, I think that, you've always had yo-yo clubs. Yes, it is getting a bit more stratospheric in terms of club finance now.
Yeah.
But that puts us in a better situation because we have a lot more money than our contemporaries, which is why you see people like you and I so irritated when we're tied at the top of the table, having a higher wage bill and having more commercial, like are a superior club in almost every way, and losing winnable fixtures and thinking, okay. I think my real concern about going to the Premier League and staying up is if we go up with Daniel Farke, this is a manager that manages from the dominant position, right? Well, has to have dominant possession, all this kind of stuff. We're not going to have it going up. So does his style of play actually fit? And is he flexible? He's shown me in the past he's not. So
I think getting onto Farke is a really interesting point, and we are going to get onto that 100% when it comes to it. But I think as for sort of the sides with recent Premier League experience, just having a quick think about it, there's been a lot of, in my opinion, self-sabotage. You look at Burnley and Southampton in particular with Kompany and Russell Martin. Mm-hmm. You've stuck with 2 managers there who are more interested in their own philosophies than winning matches. Sheffield United leading up to their Premier League campaign, and I believe it was the 7 to 10 days before the season started, sold their best 2 players.
Yeah.
You look at Leicester. What would you say? Would you say out the 3 that went up last season, probably maybe the best chance of staying up with a little bit of investment within that squad? We know Ipswich had to go up and do a full scale investment.
Yeah.
Southampton's squad was probably a little bit weak, and obviously they've had almost the effects of losing, Steve Cooper, and it just. Sorry, Enzo Maresca, not Steve Cooper.
Yeah. Turns out when Steve Cooper leaves a club, the club does better.
Yeah, but
poor guy.
You've got Enzo Maresca being obviously going to Chelsea, and then afterwards you've not got really. Well, I think it was Cooper, wasn't it? It was Cooper and Nistelrooy. They've not really had inspiring appointments after that, have they? So I think there's a lot of context, Gabe, that needs to be applied with a lot of these teams as well in recent history. I think to just look at Leeds United now and to say there's no point, it's this, that, and the other, you might as well go up and then come straight back down. There's no chance of it. I don't believe that. I do not believe that. We've not, once again, you like to work on evidence. You like beds of evidence. I completely agree. I'm a little bit more like that as well as just having my own sort of eye test opinion. But I do think think a bed of evidence is key as well. I think looking at it and just saying there's no point in getting promoted when you've got owners like we have with almost, their little friends in the back pocket who are kind of within the club as well, who we know will have significant influence next year. And Leeds just being a much bigger club. And Gabe, it has weight to it. The Leeds United as the brand, the club that we are, it does have weight to it going into the Premier League. What we can do, the revenue we'll be able to gain back, the shirt sales that will be able to go up and capitalize by really enforcing and being strategic with that. I just think there's a lot more globally that Leeds can do. I just think
let me poke some holes in some of your context there. So talking about Burnley, right, when they went up and sticking with company's philosophy. Burnley lost a lot of players, and they didn't. You have to get three things right if you're a club going up. You have to get the manager appointment right. I think Company could have been the right guy, but to do that, you have to get the spending right, and then you have to buy the right players. I think for me, the clubs that stand out that have done that the best, Bournemouth is the example I'm going to keep using. Like Bournemouth brought in players for relatively good deals, and they played Moneyball. Essentially, this is what they've done. They've played Moneyball. And they brought in a bunch of players that could help them out in a bunch of different ways. They've barely had Sinistera available to them, right? Wow. But he was our big signing, that we were counting on to do a lot of stuff in the Premier League. They brought in Tyler Adams, who didn't play for almost a year for them, but now is starting and playing really well. They've done all these things. There's redundancy in the player pool because they have played Moneyball. They've recruited really, really well. One of the things I do like, and it's hard to compare because we're just in the championship. One of the things I've really said over and over that I appreciate about what the 49ers have done is they've bought well for low amounts of money, because when you spend a lot of money in this division, when you go to the next, you don't have that same war chest because there are rules around what you can spend, what your revenue is, right? Yeah. So if you've sold way more than you've spent, and when you're down a division and you go up and you get that Premier League money, you now have a huge war chest. Now, you don't want to blow that war chest with a 60 million signing on one player who may or may not be any good, like a John Kevin Augustin or whatever the case may be. You still need to play Moneyball for your first couple of seasons in the Premier League. But you have to get that right.
Or you can do a Forest, bring in 30 players and break the rules, and it works.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't worry about the consequence. But you have to get that right. You have to get the manager right. And it's about the right manager for the right period who's pragmatic enough to get you through those. When Areola first came in, they were playing differently than they play now.
Yeah.
Right? So a guy with tactical now, some real ambition, good buying policy, and enough. Bournemouth doesn't have the same commerciality that Leeds United does, but they have enough to be competitive. So I think you have to look at them just for the next couple of years to say, okay, if we get to the Premier League, we have to get it right on all three counts. The player recruitment has to be good. We have to spend money. I want to see 150 million spent. We did that with when we went up. Of course, it was Victor Orta buying players and Jesse Marsh scouting players, so it didn't work. But if you are able to allocate that kind of capital with a good scouting team, which we've seen we have now, good player recruitment. I saw you the other day on a clip talking about Al Tanaka as the signing of the season, and he is. I totally agree. For what we brought him in as and the return we're getting from him, absolutely. And we're going to have to sell some players going up because you can't carry that many people on the team sheet and still have room to upgrade. So I think we have two good things in place to stay up. I think we need the third.
Oh, this is very, very valid. But I think, you look at the makeup of the Premier League, hell of a lot of it in the last 10 to 15 years has been the Championship. A hell of a lot of it. So I don't think you can just look at the last 2 years and look at the caliber of teams that have gone up, then come straight back down. And we're kind of looking at 6 right now. I think there is serious context to be applied with all 6. And don't get me wrong, there is a huge difference between the two. But I think the chasm is being maybe spoken about more right now because of those 6. And if there was maybe 2 teams that had survived, 4 went down, we wouldn't be talking about it like we're talking about it right now. I think it's been highlighted a hell of a lot more. But yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. I'd like to see we always talk about sample size as well, Gabe, don't we? I don't want to base this just purely on the last 2 years in terms of no championship team ever been able to survive again. When you go to maybe a 5-6 year mark, let's analyze it.
Yeah, it's much more nuanced. Again, Nottingham Forest was in a relegation battle with us, right? And look what they're doing now. So yeah, I think memories are very short.
It's interesting. Very interesting. Let's get into a few of the comments as well. Telly says, good show so far, boys. If we manage to go up, I think we should be ruthless and sack Daniel Farke. Telly also says, we will need 150 mil and 6 to 8 incoming minimum to have a chance. A better coach would help too. Jez says, took Silva to get to Watford to do a decent job. He was poor with Watford and Everton. Mike Balanoff says as well, I think a top manager is far less important than a top striker. All those sides are top strikers who could find the back of the net. You have to score goals to stay up. Andy, a Burnley fan as well, has said Burnley was a massive self-sabotage under Vincent Kompany. We had a good team. VK screwed it, and Burnley big time. Leeds can compete in the English Premier League with your financial backing.
The only thing I would say to Andy is with Burnley's money situation, I think you would have gone down with a little bit more dignity, but I still think you would have gone down.
I think there's a way. I think there's a real notion here where as well and we will pivot over to the coach right now. And we're talking eventualities. We're talking about, hopeful eventualities anyway. We're talking into the future. It's long-termness, this stream. I think when you do go up, whatever team goes up, you can't have this notion consistently that you have to stick to playing out from the back as well. I think there has to be a little bit more of a direct approach. I don't think you can just consistently do, you look at Burnley and you look at Southampton as hyper examples. You even look at Luton last year. They finished, 18th? And they were a direct team. They were a direct team with Adebayo up front and Morris. The balls were being put in by the likes of Ross Barkley, Alfie Doughty. It was way more direct. And it nearly gave Luton, I remember them being, I think they came back and they went 3-1 up against Arsenal. They lost the game 4-3 at home. But they gave themselves a real chance in a lot of games, especially at Kenilworth Road game. They were punching teams in the nose. I think there's got to be a little bit more of a direct approach, and this kind of moves on to the manager a little bit, and we've spoken about it previously when it comes to a tactical nuance, that you have to relinquish control. You can't be going up to the Premier League thinking that you can dominate phases.
No, and you
can't go up to the team with a lesser quality of player, of caliber, and think that you can go up against mid-table teams even where the difference is so vast right now, and think you can keep the ball, have 60-65% possession and move them around. It's got to be pragmatic. You've got to adapt. And we don't need to tell Daniel Farke and Scott Parker and Chris Wilder that, but what we do need to understand as a fan base is that should be how Leeds United adapts in the Premier League. There needs to be a little bit more of a direct style and relinquish.
I'm going to show my age here and just start complaining about the modern game. So one of the things that drives me crazy about watching games now, and we have to watch a lot of them, and I watch them across a number of leagues, in the English game especially, both at the championship level, but particularly at the top, players either aren't given the freedom or aren't conditioned any longer to think for themselves. So they're put into these systems where they're told to play one way. And yeah, that may work great in a particular phase of the game, or against particular opponents. But there is going to be a point where players on the pitch will adapt to what you're doing. And a good manager trusts his players to, hey, maybe the keeper isn't going to try to play the ball out of the back when there's somebody right on him. Maybe he's just going to boot it down. Sometimes he'll play it out of the back. Sometimes he'll clear his lines. It doesn't happen as much anymore. One of the things that drove me nuts about Marsh's system is it worked great for the first 50 minutes. And then we just didn't change the way we played. It was like no matter what, the players had to just keep losing possession, hoofing the ball up. And once the team adapted to our press, they knew how to play us through. The same thing with like Farke's system. It's all predicated on control. And we can't necessarily always change the pace of the match when we need to, whereas Brownie would say, under the cosh. I do think, Tim Howard said something interesting in an interview like a year ago. It got taken out of context, I think, as like it was taken literally, but it was meant figuratively, that Pep Guardiola's ruined football. Because it's not Pep's fault, but it's given all these clubs this idea that if I hire a brilliant manager with an idea and an ideal that he's going to impress in a system, that will give us instant success no matter what.
Yeah.
And at Manchester City can afford to buy these players who function like chess pieces, do the same thing every time. But by the way, it doesn't always work like this season. Eventually, sometimes the wheels fall off. And that's if you're top level, top money, top talent. Teams in the mid-table of the Premier League or lower end of the table do not have that consistency. They do not have those players that function as chess pieces that do the same thing every time. They make mistakes. They make mental errors. They're inconsistent like they do in the Championship. That's why they're in the Championship, right? So this idea that you're just going to get, I don't want another manager that's committed to playing one way or even two ways. I want a manager that sets up an infrastructure. There's a style of play, but also trusts his players and recruits players that have the intelligence and the tactical awareness like you see in Serie A. I know Serie A doesn't have the same big money anymore, but a lot of these players are tactically much more advanced than the English game sometimes, simply because they know when to play and when to not. Same thing in Spain. I think that's why we see on the international stage a certain type of team wins more often, because these guys know how to play under different conditions, and they're not just glued to the idea of a manager playing one way. Or sometimes they'll just say, screw what the manager says. We're going to do this in the moment.
Freedom. And you look at, I guess the classic example recently is not only PSG are playing systematically, but there is a freedom in the play. There's a massive freedom in the play when it comes to Neves, when it comes to Vitinha in the park. You see Dembele moving across that front three.
Spain, Argentina, these international teams do this, and teams in those leagues as well. Obviously not the Argentinian league, but they play that way as well. Listen, this isn't like my opportunity to bag on the English game. In some ways, I think it's wonderful, and it's not just the English influence. Obviously, Pep Guardiola isn't even English, right? So it's not about that. But when you think about, look at who the manager we have now and the commitment to play to a certain way without a lot of flexibility, no matter how the conditions change around you, that's debatably fine when you have the best players in the division and the highest wage bill in the division. We won't have that next season. So how do you adapt? Well, let's look at what he's done in the past. He hasn't adapted, and he's been sacked. He was sacked at Norwich. He was sacked in the Bundesliga and with the same criticisms. The same criticism that we're loving him now, saying that we should have a gap and we should be better in the league in terms of our positioning. I know we're tied first, but we should be more points ahead, because we've left points on the table. I'm going
to ask you a really direct question here, and you can answer it or you don't have to. I think there's,
you know me, I'm very shy.
Probably. Yeah, exactly. I think, and everybody let me know in the comment section below. But we've got Gabe on for this one. I've got as a friend, I've got a feeling he's leaning in a certain way. Regardless of what happens next season, regardless, keyword for everybody in the chat. Would you keep Daniel Farke next season at Leeds United?
No, I would not.
So
if he doesn't get us up, that's 2 seasons in a row.
Yeah.
He's sacked immediately.
I think one side of the coin is very much, you are right. And this is just hypothetical chat. Everybody, I know some people won't like this. We are in a final furlong. We're top of the division, but we are talking about, just eventualities, a little bit of fun here, scenario chat. And we do have a certain reason we're having this.
Let me give you the second side of the coin as to why I wouldn't, no matter what. Because going into for what I just said, he's tactically inflexible and has a set system he wants everyone to play that's predicated. It's not just that there's a system. Some systems are good about playing and counterattacking. That's great for a team that's going in at the lower part of the table. But if you're predicating your entire system on control of the match through possession, you're not going to have that as a recently promoted team. You're not.
I agree.
So I just don't think he's well suited. Maybe Farke would be good for in the Premier League if you have mid-table talent or mid to high level talent that are going to possess the ball all match. He might be better in that scenario. But for
we have to say he didn't completely kibosh when he was at Mönchengladbach. I don't think they moved a position. I think it was just a very steady Eddie performance from him when he was in Germany. Norwich,
but he was criticized for the same things that we're criticized.
Oh, he was massively criticized. Yeah, the exact same things we're talking about, and the exact same things that happened at Norwich. Although he was, at Norwich, he's their equivalent to Marcelo Bielsa. So, I think what we do have to say is, I think he's done a good job so far. I think if we did remain in if we remain in the Championship, I will be sacking him at the end of the season. But what I would say as well is if we were to go to the Premier League, I don't know. I think it's really harsh, and you're taking an extremely harsh line with it. I know Telly's in the chat as well.
Let me just say it's unfair. But it's unfair. I'm going to acknowledge it. It's unfair.
And let me preface that. I think it is extremely harsh.
It is
what you are saying, and I think there are others that will say it, because you have got a man who, if we are talking about meritocracy, his performance has led Leeds United to a championship title or a championship top 2. That should be rewarded. It should be then rewarded. But the problem with getting to the Premier League and having a manager who you deem, and a lot of us do in certain instances, to not adapt and be pragmatic in certain situations is a real worry. However, what I will say is, if Daniel Farke was to be given the cash, you were talking about almost mid-bracket players. Leeds would be targeting mid-bracket players, you would hope, with the occasional maybe cream of the crop player from a lower, potentially a lower division. Would that not aid Daniel Farke in terms of going forward with that?
No, because, and here's why. There's a difference between giving a guy like Kieran McKenna what he deserves, because there's not a lot of data for on. And what I mean is, like, there's not a lot of present. He's a younger manager earlier in his career, and all he's done is make a lot with a little, right? So you're thinking, okay, he's gotten us to the Premier League. Clearly he deserves to still be here, and he may keep them up. He may not, but he may. Right. So that's something you think about. With Daniel Farke, you have years and years and years of granular and just macro data to step back and be like, right, Farke does well when he has all the best players in the division, like best player in certain positions, maybe not across, but in certain positions does the best. Now, if the point is that, all right, we'll upgrade and we have to recruit perfectly, and if we recruit perfectly, maybe he'll be the right guy. For me, he's still not tactically flexible enough. Like, we lose or draw against teams in this division that we should beat, right? So every match counts in the Premier League.
Is that just not football?
It is, but every match counts in the Premier League. The margins are so small, right? So, like, look back. Would we be in this division if Jesse Marsch hadn't found a way to bring that match home against Arsenal? Or if, how many close Nottingham Forest match, right? I mean, there's 2, 3, 4. It comes down to 2, 3, or 4 games to getting you relegated, unless you're like Southampton.
You also look at when Sam Allardyce came in. If we'd have managed to get a point against Man City away when we lost 2-1, but then you look at if Bamford had have converted the penalty.
That's what I mean. As bad as we were that season, that's what it comes down to. So yeah, if you drop points against a team that you should beat, it matters in the Premier League, unless you're that much better than everybody else, which we won't be. Because even if we spend 150 million, we're not going to have a better side our first year in the Premier League than Brentford, than Everton, than all these other teams that are fighting to get out of the relegation area and into mid-table. So if we're only looking to be better than 4 teams, then maybe we can run with Daniel Farke. But for me, it's risky. He's shown us who he is year after year, right? He's shown us who he is in the championship. Great championship manager. It is harsh. I'll go ahead and say it's probably unfair. But this isn't a business of fairness. It's a business of your meritocracy, but you don't earn the next stage of merit. I bring in, for instance, in what I do, there are people that are good for like a 0 to 50 head count or 100 head count. And when you're done, when you get to that point, usually those people get laid off, and they bring in somebody who's done what the job is and has done it better than your lack of doing it, right? So I would bring in a manager that shows more flexibility and who's managed successfully at the top division, making a lot with a mid-table side. That's what I would do.
But what I will say in backing of you is it's not your job. You can't say, like with what you're doing now, you cannot say you believe that a manager based on evidence is tactically inflexible, okay? Which is what you're saying.
Yes.
You don't believe he can be pragmatic in certain situations. He's wedded. He's maybe a little bit stubborn in situations which you believe can't, work in the Premier League. You can't then argue back, and I'm seeing a little bit of it in the chat, guys. And what I would say is you can't then say back to Gabe, because I see this a lot. Well, who would you get? Who would you go and get then, genius? Who would you go and get then, genius? Because that's not Gabe's job. And B, we're looking at maybe, or Gabe's looking at the actual conversation of Daniel Farke here, and Daniel Farke, based on what we've seen, been able to adapt to the Premier League. What I will say though, is I'm maybe less harsh than what Gabe is on Farke. I would maybe look at giving him time. I do think, though, everybody, and some of you will say, Conor, you've been Geneva, you sat on the fence, because I do think there is grey involved with black and white. But what I will say is, if we were to go up, big if, because if we're in the Championship, he's sacked 100%. But if we go to the Premier League, I think my worry would be the fact that what we've been speaking about this whole stream, we've not seen the evidence, guys. We've not seen that evidence. We've not seen the evidence at Norwich. However, Gabe was talking about
we've seen the evidence to the contrary. And that's the difference between like Kieran McKenna and a Daniel Farke, is because they both essentially did the same thing in the Championship, right? But one guy has an evidence of failure at the next level, and the other guy did not. So that's why you give the guy a go. And that's still risky.
We're going to pull on everyone's heartstrings in a second as well. We're going to get into it. Gabe, sorry, and everybody, get your comments in. They're flooding in if you agree, disagree. What I would say, guys, is, and people who are watching this in the comment section below as well, sometimes we do these videos and we do it for discussion, and I love doing these with Gabe because I always feel it's really intelligent conversation and I enjoy it a lot. What I would say is, please get your opinions in the comment section below. If you are watching this now, please just refrain yourself from doing it. And what I want is the Leeds United universe, the One Leeds universe as well. If you see some comments just outrightly abusing because they don't agree with the opinion, just pull you back from that.
Oh, has that happened?
Just no, it's not. But just pull yourself back from that emotional roller coaster and do me a favor, call that person out. Or if you are that person, just delete your comment. It's just a discussion. That's all this is. Come on, we're better than that. Let's get into a couple of comments. Gabe's right. It's like a software program they're playing. Telly says, agree, it's harsh, mate, but the entire stadium redevelopment relies on survival. Good point. Bournemouth sacked O'Neill on their way up. We can do it. Hannah Howard, on the contrary, says, who plays the best football in the Championship? We do, by far. Howard then goes to say, who has built the most technically adept squad that we have? Let's have a quick conversation as well. Telly again has said, we must reduce our risk of relegation in every possible way, coach included. We cannot risk Ellen Roadstone. Again, good point. I do not like Farke at all, but even I think if he gets us up, then he deserves the first 10 games of the Premiership. What I would say, guys, is, for everybody who's talking about maybe the first 5-10 games, because I'm like that, I'm thinking maybe sort of 5-6 games. My question will be, we've just been speaking about the difference between the Championship and the Premier League. We've been speaking about recruitment. If we got to the Premier League and we lost, let's say, 5 games or 4 games, or, we look at a run of 10 games and we lose 8 or 9, would you be looking back and saying, we shouldn't have given him those games? We should not have given him 5 or 10 games, because that has massively, especially if you go through, if you've gone 10 games, let's say hypothetically we've got a couple of wins or we've got 1 win and we've been battered 7 or 8 times, you're then looking down the barrel of the gun very, very early on in the season. You kind of get into that Christmas period of which you're looking down and thinking, flipping out, we've got a bit to carry back here. So, and wins in the Premier League are so rare. So, yeah, it's an interesting conversation, I'd say, Gabe, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you have to run these scenarios. And look, the reality is that I understand that it is unfair. It is. I'll say it. It's unfair.
Yeah.
But anybody that doesn't recognize that professional sports isn't fun and games, that this is the jungle, is going to get eaten. And we have been eaten before. And you have to be absolutely ruthless. And maybe it's mean. Maybe it's, somewhat unfair. But at the end of the day, that's the business. It is a business.
I do want to play devil's advocate. I'm trying, and I'm trying to be balanced here. Of course I am. But what you're providing me with is, you're saying, look, you look at the evidence. There is no evidence with Daniel Farke succeeding in the Premier League. That is my main, and that is my main body of concern. If we were to get there, that is my main body of concern, because
there's no evidence of Daniel Farke advancing a team in any major division.
And how
because the competition is so stiff.
Howard, we have 100% given him credit, mate. He deserves credit. He's doing a brilliant job so far. We'll wait and see. With 8 games to go, we hope. Look, what I always want to say on this channel, Howard, is there are people who are black and white with it 100%. Farke in, Farke out, but there is a grey as well, mate. There is a grey. There's people who maybe think, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. Just because you do sit on that fence a little bit, it doesn't mean that you are, either scenario there, really. Look, you wanted to bring up something in particular, Gabe, of which we were speaking about off stream, and
I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up because we're going to test everyone's for this. And I'm saying this with a smile, by the way, because I don't mean it to be digging anyone in here.
This is an interesting one. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put up this while.
Well, wait, no, don't give it away first. Let me give the wrap.
If there are any wrestling fans in the chat, Gabe's about to throw one of these into the mix.
An RKO out of nowhere.
if there are any wrestling fans, this is a CM Punk pipe bomb. Go ahead, Gabe.
Okay. So for all you folks, and again, it's all fun and games here. We're all friends. So we're all friends in a bar having drinks together or a pub. And I say to you, you really want to keep Daniel Farke next season. He's earned it. You think he's earned it. It's unfair. Reports, and you can just Google it.
Maybe not.
Now you're putting yourself on a watch list. What a weirdo.
Sorry,
done that for?
I was just Urban Dictionary is different.
You're ruining the symmetry of this whole thing. Here's the deal. Uruguay's not happy with Bielsa. The players aren't happy with him. The press isn't happy with him. In those situations, Bielsa doesn't particularly hang around, right? Because of how strong his own opinions and his self-belief is in a great way, right? Leeds United, we know, the 49ers group, made an approach to Marcelo Bielsa when we were relegated before they hired Daniel Farke.
Via Phil Hay.
Yeah, Phil Hayes confirmed it. They wanted him back at the club. He was interested, but ultimately had made another commitment. Would you want to keep Daniel Farke if this ownership group could say, we're going to give Marcelo Bielsa 150 million quid and bring him back to the club? Would you still want Daniel Farke? Yes or no? Tell us in the comments. And this isn't completely pipe dream. I'm not saying this is happening, but it's not complete nonsense. There's evidence to suggest that this could be on the table.
It's not going well. It's not going well at Uruguay either, is it?
No. And the players don't like being. Bielsa has a very demanding style. Is that the best? I mean, when he first got there, they were killing it. But was it the best for the kind of players and egos and personalities at the international game? Who knows, right? So. Do you want Daniel Farke if we can get Marcelo Bielsa? Tell us in the chat.
Yeah, we've got a poll in the comments. Yeah, I mean, I guess the adaptability of Bielsa was always questioned, Gabe, in a sense. I mean, he but then again, someone flashed up the team he had in the Premier League.
Costa.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
dude, it was
in Tyler the Premier League, by the way. That's an average championship team that he had.
I think in centre midfield he had Tyler Roberts and Stuart Dallas. In centre midfield, it was. And podcast lad to Lee's not seen you in a while, mate. Hello, been on the circuit for a while. Pipe bomb response, Bielsa every day, but we have to back him in. That would be the interesting part of it.
That would be the thing. War chest of 150 million, Marcelo. We will go after anybody you want, and this is the money you have to spend. And because again, they've had this spending policy in the championship for a reason. They've not dropped a ton of money for a reason. They want to have a war chest because they know we need it to stay up in the Premier League. I'm gonna just put my cards on the table here. I would 110% all day and twice on Sunday, the Lord's Day, bring back Marcelo Bielsa. I would, as Brownie would say, drive Daniel Farke to the airport. I would say, Daniel, you are the man, but enjoy your chocolate factory in Germany.
Were you not saying not long ago, almost, you shouldn't go back to where you were? Wasn't that the whole rhetoric?
Because where we were was a bunch of mid players elevated to be good players by this guy. So this is the guy I would go back because he is an elite manager. 10 years ago, now he's an elite manager. None of the players that we shipped out of town, like there are people telling me, "Oh, bring back Clicky," but he's not been good in MLS. Of course, I don't want to go back for Click, but I want to go back for Marcelo because he's elite, absolutely elite.
This level of team, unbelievable. Melee, Shot, Ailing, Pascal. Look at this, the team, man. The team. Yeah, it's crazy. Reality, Farke is top class, but was never backed at Norwich, Leeds. Parag must learn, invest big in quality players season after season. We did it with Raf, do it again. Back Farke. Don't.
All right, lad to Leeds. Would you take, wait, what is this? Wake up, please wake up. There's a giant lion wearing a Union Jack flag. What was that all about?
What are you looking at? What are you on about?
You just posted the comment with the guy's icon.
Oh, I didn't see that. You can't see the icon on my interface.
AI. Yeah, I started throwing it off.
But we've got currently, it might interest you, we've got 82% of people saying they would sack Farke and bring Bielsa back. I guess the interesting part of it would be, Brad Bazzani, and we found out afterwards pretty much from Conor, after Conor kind of told us, and people like me did, fall on that sort of rhetoric from Conor, and that Bielsa wanted to stay with the players that he had. He wanted to invest a little bit, but he was very stubborn, and they really struggled behind the scenes to get the perfect
What they probably didn't tell you is he's very stubborn because we offered him $2 million.
Exactly, yeah.
I'd be stubborn too if you gave me a small amount of money.
But maybe the 49ers did think at that period, they thought, do you know what? We will go back. We will back him like Brad Bazzani couldn't do because he couldn't afford it. We'll put a different framework around him. I mean, the reality is Marcelo Bielsa, from a moralistic standpoint, would never do it. There's no way he would go back. I'm pretty convinced of it, to be honest with you.
If the new ownership group went back to him and said, Marcelo, listen, you're a legend in the city. You're a legend at the club. We will back you. We will give you X amount of dollars or pounds this summer to sign who you want. We have this whole scouting team, and we will give you multiple players at positions who can do the job you want, who are committed to play the style you want to play and are going to be all in for the side. I don't think that he'd say no, because the guys that did him wrong are out the door. They're gone. He'd still be there, and those guys would be gone. Who wins in the end, Conor?
Football wins, Gabe.
Football wins. Listen, I think this is about 20% chance of happening. I don't think this is, but it's not zero. It's not zero. And it presented with that scenario, I would absolutely do it. Absolutely, I would do it. Look at you rubbing your face. Tell me you wouldn't do it. You'd want Daniel Farke.
No, I feel I'm splitting into two different questions here. Farke or would I want Bielsa if Farke was to go? But then again, look, the grandeur of Leeds United is probably surpassed by Marcelo Bielsa in terms of reputation. So I don't ever think that Bielsa felt overawed at all by Leeds United, and he took it in his stride. I just worry, was that lightning in a bottle? If you're going up with the Premier League players and you're bringing more players in, would they want to work under Marcelo Bielsa? We've said it before, there is an end point with Bielsa. You'd have to recruit for Bielsa, of course. I'll tell you what, let's just bring in Valverde. We'll take Valverde, Darwin Núñez. We'll bring him all those guys. That'd be nice. They work hard. I don't know. My heart, well, I don't know, head as well if he was backed.
If you want to bring elite players into a club, it's not, the club's reputation isn't enough anymore, because new reputations are built every decade, right? So Everton has a great club history. Would I want to go there now? As a player? I'm not sure, right? So listen.
Oh, there you go. That'd be a coming down.
But if Phillips came back with the demands of Marcelo Bielsa, we wouldn't see a overweight, out of shape Phillips. We would see if he could do it.
He'd be still broken though. He'd be absolutely broken. Like, with the whole Bielsa thing. To be fair, he knew. I think from what we understand anyway, after like the second year, he turned around Bielsa and went, "I need a new team."
Yeah, because they're just broken. And to be honest, but that's a realistic cadence. You know what I mean?
Like Scottish, yeah.
And some of those players you could sell on for profit, because under Marcelo Bielsa, he elevates players to be better than they are. I haven't seen a lot of that more recently. So
FFS says I would take the translator with huge arms as well.
Yeah, we're getting into a little bit of science fiction here, but the reality is that it would be pretty. How's that for narrative?
It's a good one, mate.
Yeah, and do imagine Tanaka under Bielsa. Lodi just said it. Ooh.
Yeah. Interesting.
Connor's over there dreaming of bringing back Mark Rocca to play under Bielsa.
Come back, sweet prince. That's my narrative. Mark Rocker in a team with a consistent manager.
For those of you who think Americans don't understand sarcasm, that was sarcasm, folks.
I really hope it wasn't literal. But yeah, guys, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in on this Sunday. It's been a little bit of fun, but as I say, get your opinions in the comment section below. We've had a few topics on this one. Make sure you're slapping a like. Me and Gabe do this every Sunday, and it is called the Hard Line, so we will be putting the hard questions to each other. I think this was a good one. And a few little hypothetical situations in there. So join us next Sunday for the hard line, everybody, when we're going to be reviewing Leeds United, hopefully getting that W over Swansea. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you in a bit. Cheers.